Welcome to the Via Stoica Podcast, where we discuss Stoicism, the ancient philosophy of living the good life. I'm your host, Bryce, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Benny and Brendan. We are here to help you apply Stoic wisdom to your everyday life, no matter what the obstacle you may be facing, whether it be work stress, relationship issues, or just the general ups and downs of life. Stoicism has something to offer us all.
Welcome back to the Via Stoica Podcast. I'm here with Brendan. My name is Benny, and as we're heading into the holiday season, I wanted to welcome Brendan here with a big ho ho ho. And how are you doing?
Hey, what's going on, Benny? I'm glad to get your greetings. Season's greetings to you as well. I'm doing great, doing wonderful over here in Panama. Loving life, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well as well in Spain, the other side of the world almost. So we've been a bit closer together at one point, but now we're separate again. But luckily, to technology, we get to speak and have these great conversations. But yeah, as we talked a little bit, we're going to talk about the holiday seasons and the holiday the things, everything that comes in with it. And I just wanted to see, like, how are you preparing for these days, and what do you usually do during these holiday periods?
Yeah, no, it's going to be, when I saw that this is what we were discussing today, I had some mixed feelings because for the last few years, as my wife Kara and I have been traveling the world, we haven't been doing the traditional Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays with our families like we had been doing for the previous, 30 some odd years before that. So my view of the holiday season has kind of changed a lot over the last 5 years. And, it used to be something where I really did think that, this is the time when you come together with family. Now, in the United States, we also have Thanksgiving in November. So you have kind of the holiday in November, and then you also have Christmas in December. So as I started getting away from, I guess, the routine, right, of doing Thanksgiving and Christmas and always going to my grandmother's house and the same people being there and that sort of thing, I started to realize, like, maybe we don't need to do both. Maybe one of them should be more about spending time with your friends or your core family, right? Like your spouse, your children, that sort of thing, not so much the extended family. So yeah, I'm really interested to see, how you think about this, especially from like an international standpoint. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's holidays that are really important because I do think, as you know, like time is super important to me. I like to put time into perspective. And oftentimes it's the holidays. Is the one time a year that you see your grandparents or your aunt, your favorite uncle or your cousin or whatever. So, I mean, it is times to definitely cherish because, you may only get, a few of those in your lifetime, right? Like I said, I was going to Christmas every year and seeing my cousins and stuff, but I haven't seen them in a few years. And, things happen and people move away and they have kids and they get distracted. So, there's years where you're going to miss out. And you're going to miss people in your family. So cherishing the moments that you do have, regardless of how stressful they may be. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as well. But, there's always little moments. There's always little things that I look back on when I think of my last 35, 36 years of life. And some of my most fondest memories with my family is during, Christmas season, Thanksgiving season, that sort of thing. So, yeah. I'm definitely interested in seeing how the topic goes today because I know that a lot of people view the holidays very differently. So, but what about you? How are things? And if you do know, I mean, just for my own interest, like, is there a difference that you've noticed in how the holiday season is in the US versus the Netherlands in any way?
Well, I think, with the US, everything is just a little bit bigger. It's just a little bit more out there. But I think at the core, it's pretty much the same, right? We usually had like a big family dinner just with the core family as much, sometimes people have to work. Like I remember back in the day, like sometimes my mom had to work. She was a midwife, right? So kids even get born during Christmas, as we know from baby Jesus. But like even so, she sometimes had to work. My dad had to work. His job also involved kind of when the winter time's around. So we had mixed kind of Christmas dinners, but always very nice, right? There was always kind of this atmosphere. But as I moved out and just started traveling, like I've lived outside of the Netherlands for almost 15 years right now. So, and I've missed many of Christmases. Sometimes you're just not able to travel back, or sometimes you're just somewhere else, right? You just want to do something else. So I don't think I've really I kind of shifted away a little bit from having that special time during Christmas or the holidays, but more just kind of, whenever we get to spend time together, that's just really nice. And then kind of these kind of things come together. But yeah, like whenever I can, I do want to make something special out of it, but it's not something necessary anymore, right? And I also understand that this is a period where a lot of people feel very lonely because they just don't have those people around, and they just don't feel like they have they can go and visit the people that they want to go and visit. So for a lot of people in the world, it's a very special time and festive time, but there's also a lot of people out there who just look up against these days, who just don't want to have them, who just prefer to have them gone, right? Which is which is one thing to say, which is a difficult thing for a lot of people. But for me, yeah, I always enjoy them, even when I'm alone. Even when I'm alone, and I can still do my same thing. Sometimes I need to, pause a little bit more. We always talk about, the newsletter. If anyone hasn't signed up, we have a newsletter called The Pause. But just pause and just take stock at those moments, because there are moments of reflection, and you can see a lot of people enjoying themselves, which is great. But if you do feel lonely, and yeah, there's also ways to make it happen that way, right? And I think there's Stoic practices that we can look into, and just in general, being more comfortable being alone will also help in that sense. And if you do feel lonely, try to reach out to people and try to find, because I'm sure that there's other people out there who feel the same, and you can reach out and see if you can connect that way.
Yeah, no, I like that, because it is definitely a season of togetherness and connectedness. I think, and that's one of the reasons why, like, I love the Thanksgiving holiday in the US. The Thanksgiving holiday, at least to me, in my experience, has much more of like a community, family, sort of everyone vibe, where Christmas is more, because, it's more the one where you're just there with kind of your core family. But like Thanksgiving, no telling who's going to come by for Thanksgiving dinner. It can be anyone, right? And that's kind of the fun, exciting part to me. So I do think that there is a part of the holiday season where people don't, of course, the family and your closest friends and relatives are what's most important to you. But I think just trying to connect with people in general, remind them what they mean to you. Like, I agree with you that we are approaching the end of the year. It is definitely a time of reflection and things like that. And during the holiday season, especially, like, I remember being in university and stuff, and that was the time when I would see people once a year, because I'd go back home from where I was at college, and then I would see people once a year and then kind of catch up with them. So there is that sort of moment where you get that aspect of it too. That was one of my favorite parts of the holiday season, was like, oh, I haven't seen these people in a year. It's going to be really exciting to get back together again, and stuff like that. So those are, yeah, definitely the good parts, right, of the holiday season, the parts I look forward to. But then there's also the not so great parts, right? Like, there is some, there's going to be some stress involved if you've got some family dynamics that are difficult to navigate. Or, of course, I would say recently in the last decade or so, the political discourse in the United States has been really divisive. So that can be difficult to navigate with your family members and things like that. But I think it is, and while all those stressors are true and they do exist, and we know that too, right? As Stoics, we accept that they're going to happen. Trying to focus on the positive, trying to focus on the good parts of it. Of, yeah, maybe your cousin or your uncle says a comment that you're not really too fond of, but also they're your family member and you love them, and I'm sure you have other wonderful memories with them that you can choose to focus on that instead. So I do think that over the last few years, these kind of family gatherings have gotten a little tense sometimes. But as Stoics, we accept that that's going to happen. We accept that that's there, right? We're different individuals with different opinions and different perspectives. So naturally, we're going to have different ideas about how things should be done. But just putting into perspective, I think, of focusing on the fact that these are your family members. You love these people, right? So it might be stressful. You might have that aunt or uncle who's just a jerk because, they're fighting with your dad or whatever. You have all this family drama, but like, that's just, put it by the wayside for a day or two, spend some time together, because at the end of the day, when those people are gone and no longer here on earth with you, you're not going to remember that you had some little argument about some, silly thing. You're going to remember like the happiness, the joy, the fun times you had with that uncle or that family member. So that to me seems to be one of the biggest stressors, is just kind of the family dynamics. And then of course the other thing of, you are trying to usually put on some sort of event, right? You know, the kind of standard story of people in the kitchen, you know, the mother in the kitchen making everything and directing people to help her chop stuff and grab this bowl and do that. I mean, there is going to be that kind of stressful craziness too. But I think as Stoics, we can acknowledge that, you know, something might go wrong, right? You know, we might forget that ingredient, and that's okay. And we might not, this dish may not be perfect, but who cares? Like, you're not there for the food, you're there for the people. So I think that's an important thing too, is that the event itself, the actual like logistics of it, doesn't have to be perfect. And most likely something's going to go wrong. In fact, if you tell yourself something's going to go wrong and then something doesn't, oh, that's a win. And if it does, then you're right. Congratulations. So I do think that those are kind of the two biggest things, at least for me, when I think about what stresses me out and how I deal with it. But what about you, Benny? Do you have like, you know, I don't know. You're not really a guy that exudes a lot of stress. I don't think. Like, you seem pretty calm and collected, but I don't know the Benny of 10 years ago. Maybe your holiday seasons were a bit more stressful. What about you, Benny? Anything on that?
Yeah, I do know stress sometimes, but maybe it's just a little bit less than other people, and just focusing on what to do, right? But I think when you talk about expectations, and I've thought about this for a long time, and now that people who are listening to this, they've probably in the, I don't know what age group you are, but if you're beyond your teens, beyond you're more in the adult side of your life, we tend to have this romanticized idea about the holidays. Oh, when I was little, I used to go back home and have a nice cup of cocoa and sit by the fireplace and all be together. But then as a child, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, right? You don't know that there's stress because you're just oblivious of that. So one of the things that can really ruin the expectations is staying stuck in those feelings while not acknowledging the fact that, hey, now you're an adult. You're going to take on some responsibilities. You're going to help out with the meal. You're going to see what's going on. And you want to try to build that, or maybe recreate that ideal scene of when you were younger and get that feeling back, right? But now you're seeing all these other things. So one of the things that I like to think about, and as Stoics as well, you want to stay in the moment. You want to acknowledge what your duty is, what your task is, right? So that's one of the things. Okay. And also, as you said, it's probably not going to happen that you recreate that perfect feeling, right? There's going to be tensions. You want to do it this way, the other family member wants to do it that way. So, and maybe if you're lucky, it all aligns, but then you're missing some ingredient, as you said. So things can go wrong. But still, even there's the fun of it. I remember one Christmas dinner and this was when I was already kind of later in my teens. So we were already helping out with cooking and we're preparing the dish. And I remember we were busy, everything's on the stove, and one of us, I think my mom picked like because my mom always said, like, I don't want to stress about this. I want to spend as much time together. So let's just do the cooking as quickly as possible. Make it nice, right? Something special, but not really that's going to take all day or week to cook. So she's like, oh, we need something else. So she opened this bag and it was a pasta dish, like a tagliatelle with some kind of vegetables or something, right? We're completely out of order with the rest of the food that we had. And we just all laughed at it. It's like, oh yeah, now we're just having pasta with our, with a rabbit and whatever, So there's this fact that we can also bring some joy. We can laugh at the things that go wrong, right? Because at the end of the day, it is a period of having joy and laughing. And what I've been really seeing more in kind of philosophy and being curious about life is also keeping this joy alive instead of looking at things and labeling them as like, oh, this is bad, we should have the perfect thing. No, we need to be able to laugh and have some humor in it as well, and especially during these days, because at the end of the day we are together. And it's so much better. You can overcome so many, of the discussions or the misalignment of visions and ideas by just laughing at things and adding some more humor and say, oh, look what went wrong. Yeah, this is great. Instead of really saying, oh no, now my perfect night is gone, right? So it's managing those expectations. It's a real big thing. And that's where, things like Amor Fati come into play, but also the negative visualization, knowing, hey, things can go wrong, but we are still together. And maybe even the worst thing would be is like not being together, but we can still think about each other. We can still kind of call. Like I've had many Christmas meals or where I'll be on a Zoom, right? I'd not be there, but I'd still be there because I know people are thinking about me, right? So we don't have to make it as bad as we think. So that's one of the things with the expectations that you said that you mentioned. I think it's a really important one. To make sure that you're not living it from the past, but realizing where you are right now and what your situation is, what your duty is, and helping out. I think that's one of the biggest things of keeping the holidays nice and fun for everyone.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. I'm glad you brought that up. Because yeah, I've never like thought of the kind of, obviously the holiday season changes as you grow. But as you were talking about that, I remember, so I have a younger sister, and there was a point where, I knew, for any kids out there, cover their ears. I knew the truth behind about Santa, but my sister didn't. So, right, it was like my job to like kind of keep that dream alive, so to speak. Um, and one evening, like one Christmas Eve, I remember my stepmom coming into my bedroom being like, "I need your help." I was like, "I don't understand what's going on." She's like, "You're gonna help me wrap presents." I was like, "I don't know how to wrap presents." She's like, "Well, you're gonna learn, and then you're gonna help me." And I was like, not really happy about it. Like I remember being like, fine, whatever. Like I was reluctantly going in the room to help her out, and then she shows me how to wrap presents. Now I love wrapping presents. It's like one of my favorite things to do, and I never would have known that if I didn't help out. So I think that's another aspect of like being curious, and finding out new things. And I like what you said. Like it's your duty as you grow older to like kind of be like, yeah, you were the kid at one point and you got to do nothing and eat cookies, but now you're like a young adult and you got to like do something, right? You don't have to lead the ship, right? You don't have to make the whole meal, but you got to cut the carrots or something, So I think that's good. And that's how life works, right? As we grow older, we get more and more responsibility. So why shouldn't that also apply to our kind of family gatherings and holiday festivities and such? But yeah, I just remember that. I remember being up late wrapping presents and like hating it. But now like that's my like I like wrapping presents. It's like I can get the folds just right and the little tape, put the tape right where I want it, and I don't know. And I still remember, and that's from like my stepmom teaching me how to wrap presents. So I've got that little holiday memory, and that's what I mean when I said earlier when I was like, you have all these core memories from my childhood, and so many of them take place, in around the holiday season. Um, and, I think at the time I probably overlooked things like that. I'm focusing on what's the new Hot Wheels that I got, not the fact that I learned how to, wrap a present. I was concerned about the toys I got and what was in my stocking and, stuff like that. So I think just reminding yourself of that, time is always a great way to get perspective, but the sooner you can get that new perspective, I think the better. But yeah, I think expectations is a good thing, in with anything, right? And I think that's a good way too. We have a tendency to almost do ourselves disservice because we tell ourselves, oh yeah, this is going to be perfect and everything's going to be wonderful and the meal's going to go smoothly and no one's going to get upset with one another and no one's going to drink too much and no one's going to eat too much, and like, but that's not life. Like that's what happens. People drink sometimes at these events. People eat too much at these events. People don't show up. People don't always pull through, right? Something happens, the car breaks down, they forget to stop at the store, whatever. There's 100 million different things that can happen, but you can still share those little moments with your family. You can still have that special, little 5-minute session in the kitchen where you're helping mom do something, and then you remember that, you know what I mean? So there's always these little things. And I think that's another thing. But as I mentioned too, like I guess as we start to sort of wrap this up a little bit, one thing I think of that can kind of go wrong on the holidays, personally, right? Because we can't control others, right? We can't control what our uncle's going to say or, what our cousin's going to do, but we can control ourselves. And I think one thing that people often forget about is temperance. Holiday season is definitely a season of gorging, a season of overconsumption. I don't even mean like purchasing, right? Like I'm not talking about presents. I'm talking about food, right? Food and drink and things like that. And I think it's good that you remind yourself and remember that, hey, that's going to happen. But think about for your own self, how do you want to behave, right? How do you want to act in those scenarios and be that example? Again, there might be young children near around. There might be other family members of yours that look up to you in some way. Like, how do you want to behave in those scenarios? How do you want people to perceive you in those scenarios? And I've had my fair share of drunken holiday experiences, and they're fun too. But there's usually some regret that goes along with them, whether that's the next morning or the day of, but either or. So remember that regret, remember that mistake, but at the same time, also don't beat yourself up. If it happens, it happens, and then you move on. But that is something that can happen. I think temperance is one thing that kind of gets thrown out the window during holiday season, and I do it. I know others do it, but definitely something to think about and decide on maybe beforehand, right? Not in the moment when the plates are getting passed around, but the day before you go and you say, hey, this is how I want to operate. But Benny, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I love that you brought up temperance, right? That's one of the things that I struggle with, especially with drinking. And I could have told myself, and I did many times, like, okay, this time you're gonna keep it, you're gonna keep it in moderation. You're not gonna go too far out, but then drink 5, 6 down the line, it would just like that would all my control, my moderation would go out of the line. So that's where I decided, for me, it's just not a good way to start at all, right? Because I know that the beast takes over, and that's interesting. I read this statistic just a few days ago about 1 out of 10 people in the UK either lose their job or get reprimanded during a Christmas drink or during a Christmas party in whatever they have at the end of the year. So it's also, this is, I think, one of the biggest maybe tests or moments to really look at your stoic life or how you want to live your life in a more philosophical way, because one of the key things that I think is often overlooked is the maintaining the right character even in these situations, right? We talk about doing our duty, making sure it's fun, enjoying, right? I think that's important as well, but also maintaining our character. And that kind of, it sounds very strict, but it can also make the holiday a lot more joyous because you are helping people out. You are still there. I remember we've had holidays where maybe I drank too much, or with all of us, and then one has to really pull the boat, pull it all together, because the rest of us aren't capable of really doing much anymore, right? Not like necessarily because we're just too giggly or just not really caring and all that stuff, and we're having a good time, but some people are left out. Well, if you can stay in moderation, if that works, then you can still all enjoy it, right? So there's this, some people would then not enjoy it, while others would enjoy it very much, and maybe until the moment where they went too far out. But I think that's where our character is really involved, where we should say, okay, I want to enjoy this, but let me also try to remain who I am. Let me not just go overboard, because it's very easy to get carried along, right? And maybe do stupid things that you are gonna regret. And again, it's not, don't beat yourself up over it if it happens. It's a learning moment. Try to use that for next time. But if you are now listening to it and you're going to a party and you're going to these things, okay, let me just see how much I can stay true to myself and not do the things that I don't want to do, right? Because that kind of tends to happen if you're in a group. You can read Seneca's letter on a crowd. Being in a crowd is probably one of the dangerous things, because even if you don't go fully with the crowd, there's still this moments where you can still kind of go a little bit and kind of sell your character out. And Epictetus has a very interesting discourse on it, how to behave at a banquet, right? There was many lavish banquets, and he would say, okay, when someone offers you food, don't go grab for it, right? Don't ignore it. Take what you can, take what you feel like, just in moderation. And if the plate doesn't come, then that's it, right? Don't be greedy and go and chasing it, or reaching out. Just take what comes your way. And that's kind of how the Stoics look at life. If what you get, use it, and if it's not there, then just don't, then just accept the fact that what you have is enough. And that's sometimes what I see with Christmas and with these holidays, where people just want to go over, right? As you said, overindulge. Why? Because now it's the holidays. I should be able to let myself go. And the Stoics give you a little warning. Is like, be mindful of your character, be mindful of who you are, because it's going to be a long year again, and you might not feel as good about yourself as you do, and that's a heavier price to pay than enjoying yourself in moderation. Maybe not as extravagant as you might like, but I think the joy will be far longer lasting than having that quick peak of joy or pleasure or whatever, than just having the memory, which sometimes the memories are even lost if you go overboard. But at least now you can remember everything and really enjoy it with your family.
Yeah, well said, Vinny. I like that. I mean, I think that's pretty much the punchline of the conversation here is, accept what you have as enough, right? Like whatever the outcome is tomorrow at your Christmas dinner, it's great. You've got time with family that you didn't have before. You had experiences with, loved ones that you didn't have before. So it's automatically a W, and you can walk away from that no matter what happens with either, some new experiences, the knowledge that you did your duty, you helped out, you did your part for the family, whether that was chopping the vegetables or taking out the trash or going to pick up the item that someone forgot, whatever you need to do. Be that person, that supportive member of your, teammate, kind of your family, and just enjoy it. At the end of the day, just enjoy it and be curious and have a good time. But we want to wish you all the best holidays from Via Stoica. We really appreciate you guys listening to us throughout the year. But happy holidays. Benny, you got any closing words as we wrap it up?
Yeah, one more thing. Also be grateful, gratitude that you are there. And just, even if you don't agree, as we said at the beginning, even if you don't agree with everybody's viewpoints on life, politics, all those topics, just be grateful that you can spend time with people, right? That you can spend time with the ones that love you and that you love and that you've grown up with and that you have all these memories with. And I think that that's one of the last things that I wanted to add to the conversation. Just be grateful that you get to experience it. And also remind yourself that not everybody can experience it. And if you are among those people who are not able to experience it with family, find other ways, right? Find other ways to think about, okay, what would a good Christmas then look for me? Or what would a good holiday season look for me? Instead of staying with yourself, maybe you can reach out to people and find some communities around you that are welcoming there for you as well. So yeah, I think the same for me, It was a good conversation. I already think about, the Christmas this year and see what I'm going to do. But yeah, happy Christmas, happy, holidays. And I wish you all the best. And thank you, Brendan, for you as well in Panama. And hopefully we'll see each other again there next time.
Thank you for listening to the Via Stoica Podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving a review. Your feedback will help us reach more like-minded people on the journey to self-improvement. If you want to get in touch with us or find more information, you can go to viastoica.com, your one-stop platform for all things Stoicism and living better. And remember, virtue is the only good.